Ole Miss is reaping the benefits of their on-field success along the recruiting trail.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Into a crossover edition of Locked On the Portal and Locked On Ole Miss. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst. Thank you for making both of our podcasts a part of your day each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We are brought to you by our friends over at Mazda. Like players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward, Mazda. Move and be moved. Today, we're going to be talking about a commitment for the Rebels. We're going to be talking about a player they're trending for, the 27 class at quarterback, and a possible flip target. And then you got to talk a little bit about Trinidad Chambliss as well. To make it all happen with me here, Stephen Willis, host of Locked On Ole Miss. Stephen, sir, how are you doing today?
I am enjoying my bye week. Ole Miss is the talk of college football, number 4 in both of the polls. Trinidad Chambliss is a Heisman candidate right now, according to FanDuel. And Ole Miss doesn't play on Saturday, so nothing could possibly go wrong. So this week's going pretty well.
That's a pretty good setup for you right there, Stephen. That's a pretty good setup. Speaking of the most recent commitment that I know about that I'm familiar with and I think is important to really discuss is Dorian Barney, the DB. I'm not sure if he's going to be a nickel, a safety, a corner. He's just a really talented player, but he plays at Carrollton. For those of you who don't know, that's one of the best programs in the United States. It's west part of the state of Georgia, about 30 minutes or so, just outside of Atlanta. And he's a kid that I watched his film again today. I'm trying to debate, do I like him long-term at safety? Do I like him at corner? And I think my overall thoughts are as long as he is, as much height as he has, just depends on your scheme and what you want to do. If you want to leave him at corner and play a lot of zone, I think he charges on the ball well. He keeps things in front of him and he's physical, but depends on how he grows. Maybe he grows out of that, ends up at a free safety, but either way, he plays the ball really well. Pete Golding and that staff will figure that out. And I'm not really sure that you could be disappointed whichever one he goes to. Ole Miss needs help at both spots, so that'll take care of itself. What are your thoughts, Stephen, on Mr. Dorian Barney?
I think if Barney continues to keep growing, I think boundary corner could be in his future because of the length that he would provide. I mean, Mason Dunn is already on that roster. He is probably going to take a step next year. But with Pete Golding and cornerbacks, Pete Golding is renowned, honestly, for finding cornerbacks and then turning them into safeties. If you can't run at a level that he expects you to run at, he is going to move you inside and not think a thing about it. I mean, that's just the way that Pete Golding operates. I don't know after looking at Dorian Barney's film, because whenever everything's on, it's just like we were talking off air. You can tell he has a couple of gears that we haven't even seen yet. But he just looks bored playing high school football to me. The players he's lining up every single day, which means he's going to be a half a step slow. There's interceptions that you expected him to make at the high school level that he just doesn't make. And it isn't because he can't make it. It's a board issue. And that's the reason I think Pete Golding wanted this guy. Even before he committed to Michigan and Ole Miss flipped him, Pete Golding wanted this prospect. And with you looking at the defensive commitments that Ole Miss has put together, their secondary is very good. I am a very big Jet Goldsberry fan in this recruiting class. I mean, that guy he's legit. But there's still some help that they're looking for on the defensive line. I think for whatever reason, the kid out of Petal, I forgot his name, Corey something, I believe.
Corey Wells.
Corey Wells committed elsewhere. Ole Miss still is looking for that defensive line prospect, and we'll talk about it a little bit later on. I think there's a chance there's a flip target down the road that they could potentially land.
Well, the defensive side of the ball's got some stuff going on that's interesting, but here's something that I found interesting from this weekend. I texted you earlier that I was enjoying watching some of the highlights from the LSU Ole Miss game. It was just, a good game to watch and it was fun. But one thing that I didn't realize the first time while I watched it live is just how well the DBs did for Ole Miss at keeping the ball in front of them. I know this isn't a very good LSU offense, but let's be clear. It is not due to a lack of talent at wide receiver.
No.
Yeah, they've got some guys that can run and can play. Their offense is just out of sync, and their offensive line in particular is it's not up to even remotely LSU standards. I'm not trying to be mean, but LSU was beaten in the trenches. Eccles and Franklin and all those guys had their moments. Obviously, Centurion Perkins, he's going to show up. And they got whipped up front, and that's why they lost. But still, Ole Miss didn't give up the home run balls. That's a quarterback that's going to get drafted in the first few rounds. They've got a few running backs that are pretty talented. Tight ends are talented, etc. They just kept everything in front of them. And I think that's helping them sell defensive backs in recruiting. It's one thing to say what you're going to do. It's another to put it on film against LSU. So Barney committed prior, but I think this is one of those scenarios. It could be somebody else too. Don't be shocked if Ole Miss flips somebody that they may not have even expected, because when the defense plays at a high level, it changes your outlook on the recruiting trail.
Yeah, think about the talent that Ole Miss has on the defensive side of the ball. The LSU stuff, all that, okay, whatever. But Ole Miss played drop 8 the whole game. It was like going against Mississippi State in 2022. I mean, that was the plan. There was no fear of the run. Every time they ran the ball, Cam Franklin's and Will Eccles, which, by the way, we should take a victory lap on Will Eccles, honestly.
We called that one.
Yeah, turning out to be a star. Xavion Harris, who had a great game, but now that Cam Franklin and Eccles are starting to bow up a little bit, that's 3 across that defensive line that's pretty good. I think it's important that the defensive line is so good that you can drop back and just play covered, not allow somebody, a pocket passer like Garrett Nussmeier, to turn loose on your secondary. And that was part of the problem that Ole Miss had in Tiger Stadium a year ago. Now, my conspiracy theory, okay? This is my conspiracy theory on what happened at Tiger Stadium last year. If everybody remembers, that was the week after Ole Miss played South Carolina in Columbia and blew them out. And the whole national narrative was about Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss faking injuries. And it was over and over. That's all you heard about for the week. But during the actual game, LSU did not get called for one single holding penalty in that game when you're going against Walter Nolan, J.J. Pegues, Jared Ivey, those guys. I genuinely think the officials were saying to Lane, cut it out. This isn't going to work. That's my conspiracy theory about 2024.
Nothing would shock me as bad as the officiating is in college football. Did you see the play in the Wake Forest Georgia Tech game? Did you hear that?
No. What happened?
The game was over. The guy for Georgia Tech jumped off sides blatantly. They snap it. And if they'd have got a first down, all they had to do is down the ball 3 times. The game's over. He throws the ball just to see if they could get yardage. It's incomplete. They don't throw the flag on the offsides. They have to punt. It goes into overtime, and Georgia Tech wins.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that's pretty rough.
Yeah.
So college football has got an officiating problem. There's no doubt about that. When we come back, we're going to talk about the quarterback situation. If there was ever a coach that had the ability to recruit quarterbacks right now and do it very easily, it would be Lane Kiffin.
He's the anti-Hugh Freeze.
That is the quote of the day, my friend. We're going to talk about that next here on this crossover edition. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and you can get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the FanDuel app. If you love betting on parlays, if you like betting on halftime scores, even a quarter, maybe it's just player props, whatever you want to do, FanDuel has an option for you. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and to get started. We are also brought to you by our friends over at Square. If you're like me, you probably like going to a local place, whether it's your local watering hole, whether it's a local guy that works on your car, maybe it's to buy clothes, whatever it may be. But when you tap your debit card or credit card, there's a good chance it's a Square reader down there taking your payment. And Square likes to support its local community. For me, I've got several places around the South when I go scout high school football that I stop at a coffee shop. Sometimes it's a place that I just hang out. Maybe it's a bookstore, whatever it is. And I like going to the local places to support my places every chance I get over corporate. It's just something I think that's good for myself and for a lot of communities. And you can do the same. Go to square.com/go/Locked On College to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square. See you in the neighborhood. All right, Stephen, let's talk a little bit about Keegan Croucher, quarterback recruiting, and just kind of the overall weirdness of college football, how one quarterback ends up being replaced by another. Who knows who it's going to be by the end of the year for Ole Miss? Anything is possible with Lane. But one thing is very certain. He's never had a hard time recruiting quarterbacks. And if there was ever a better time to do it, I don't know when it would be. But for those that don't know, Keegan Croucher, he's a class of 27 quarterback. I've seen him throw. He's from the Northeast. He's a guy that he can move, but more than anything else, he's just very accurate. He's not going to run like Trinidad is, but he can move enough to run RPO and create some problems. And he's just an on-time, on-rhythm passer that has got offers from a bunch of schools. And right now, Ole Miss is the pick. He's got Penn State and a whole bunch of other schools from the Northeast after him. So it seems a little odd that maybe Ole Miss is the pick, but if you watch Penn State's passing game, you might know why. It's hard to watch. That, by the way, that just blows my mind. It's amazing how much money Penn State has and they can't figure quarterback out. But I digress.
If you want to talk about that, it's because they've spent 2 years talking about how great Drew Aller is.
Oh, boy.
To the point where you can't go the other direction. They let Bo Perbula go to Missouri.
He's better.
It's a better quarterback. Yeah, it's not even close.
It's not even competitive. No offense, but it's blatant just watching Missouri. By the way, I think Missouri's got a great chance to make the playoff because of Perbula. If I played on a neutral field right now, I would take Missouri because I trust him more than I do Drew Aller. But again, that's another subject.
And I've said for 4 months, the two most underrated teams in the Southeastern Conference is Ole Miss and Missouri.
Well, I think both of them are trending towards being in the playoffs, so you picked very well.
Yeah, not underrated now, but underrated then.
Yep. The question I have for you, with the situation they have right now at quarterback, they've got a kid from Texas. It looks like they're going to get Keegan Croucher. He's a top 10 quarterback in the class of 27. Do you think Lane would take Croucher right now if he called him up? Or is there a pecking order? I haven't, I don't know Ole Miss like you do. What's your take on that? Because I think he's really good.
Yeah, I think they would take him immediately. He's ranked, if you look at his consensus, he's somewhere in the top 150 in the country. He's a good quarterback. And after Ole Miss 2 years ago kind of struck out on Deuce Knight, say what you want to on that, but they didn't get him at the end. This year has been weird in the recruiting cycle to where it just looked like Ole Miss was going to just have to go all in on Reese Wise from Austin Westlake, who is having a pretty good year, honestly. And if Lane recruits you, you can play the position. I think that's beyond a shadow of doubt at this moment. I think they would take Keegan Croucher. Now, he's a different style quarterback. He's more close to what Austin Simmons does as opposed to what Trinidad Chambliss does. But, yeah, I believe they would take that just to have, honestly, Lane Kiffin, Marcel Reed was once committed to Ole Miss. Damon Williams at Washington was once committed to Ole Miss. Lane and that staff can scout and find a quarterback. If Lane offers you at quarterback, I just assume you can play at this point. It's not a situation to where whoever's going to play quarterback is going to sit back in the pocket for 9 seconds and give up a massive covered sack. No special team mentioned in the Southeastern Conference about that. But I do think that Keegan Croucher is a committable offer. I do think it's takeable. And Steve Wiltfong putting out the prediction means that it's pretty likely as well. I don't know when it's going to happen, but it'll be nice to get that domino because we always talk about that. The quarterback is the domino for the class. That's the way the class gets kicked off because Croucher, if he comes to Ole Miss and commits to Ole Miss, all of a sudden he's going to start recruiting. And honestly, if we're going to be real, if Trinidad Chambliss is the guy for the remainder of this season, I don't know that you can count on Austin Simmons being here next year.
Is Trinidad done after this season? Eligibility?
He is.
Well,
he needs a Pavia waiver. So there's just enough vagueness where it could get a little bit weird. But honestly, Ole Miss football, if we're going to be real about it, and people ask my opinion all the time on that, would you mortgage the future to win this year? Yes, absolutely. 8 conference games this year. Ole Miss has the easiest schedule in the Southeastern Conference. If Ole Miss can beat Georgia or Oklahoma, they could have 11-1 on the table if everything just goes chalk. We're not even talking about Ole Miss potentially making the playoff. We're talking at the absolute worst, Ole Miss hosting a playoff game. So if that happens, you do go all in on this year. You do try to win this year. And if that happens, if something happens in January, it just kind of happens. And you feel for it happening this way because this is the definition of Wally Pipping a player, to where he did nothing to be demoted. It's not his fault at all. He just happens to be behind somebody that in his first 3 starts has been the Manning Stars of the Week and the AP National Player of the Week and all that. It's a very weird situation. And I mean, Trinidad, we're going to talk about it later. He's going to start against Washington State and probably moving forward, if we're going to be real about it. He threw a throw against LSU on a dig route that was an NFL level window and throw. It was one of those things. If he can do that, if that is how he flashes, yes, Ole Miss should be good enough to win the games that are on their schedule, whether it's in Athens or in Norman. Everything's on the table right now for Ole Miss.
Yeah, I think Ole Miss is in a pretty good spot with quarterbacks. But as we mentioned, Eccles played well. Cam Franklin played well. Big X played well. Like, they've got some guys on the defensive line, and we talked about this for a long time. For Ole Miss to take the next step as a program, you got to be able to get the in-state players that everybody out of state wants. And the names are pretty straightforward. Texas A&M, LSU, Auburn, Georgia, those kind of schools, and of course Bama, have raided Mississippi forever and stolen the linemen. They've done it forever. That sophomore group of kids in particular for the Rebels, a lot of in-state players. This is why you recruit your home state if you're Ole Miss. So we're going to be talking about a kid that has ties to the program, who's another lineman, but he is committed to a rival. That is next here on this crossover edition of Locked on Ole Miss and Locked on the Portal. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Mazda, who crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. And with all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda. Move and be moved. We are also brought to you by our friends at Gametime, and this is a great app. This is one I'm actually getting ready to make a purchase on. I'll explain momentarily. And with college football back, it couldn't be more exciting. Tailgates, rivalries, and all the energy in the stands. There's nothing quite like it, but let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel a little bit more like the battle than the actual game itself. And with hidden fees and price changes, you never know what you're getting at checkout, but not with Gametime. And that's why I use it, and you should too. The app gives you the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no hidden fees, and that's why you should use it. For me, I've got a game that I'm going to go to in my home state, go watch some hoops. Within 2 minutes, literally, I found the ticket I wanted, and I'm going to go through it and make sure tonight before I buy it, but within 2 minutes, found that seat. You can look at your view, everything in one spot right there on the Gametime app. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Gametime app today. Now it is time to discuss one of the most important recruits left for the Rebels, and that is Deuce Gerald. He is committed to the LSU Tigers, but he was at the LSU Ole Miss game hung out with some Ole Miss folks afterwards, some of the players and whatnot. His dad played for the Rebels. He's been ardently recruited by Ole Miss for a long time. He's from Collins Hill High School, just outside Atlanta. It's a prominent program, by the way. Little trivia: Travis Hunter played there. They've had some players, and it's a situation where if you could get him away from Ole Miss, not only do you take a player away from your rival, it's a legacy recruit. And in my opinion, he's one of the top 2 interior pass rushers in the class of 26, and you could never have enough of those. And he is a different body type. He's a shorter guy. He's about 6'1", but he's shot out of a cannon. Absolutely shot out of a cannon. Here's a little claim to fame. I went to the Rivals 5-star, and Deuce was there. I was just taking video. I posted one to my TikTok and all that stuff, and one to the basic YouTube page for shorts on Locked On the Portal. It did 2.5 million views in less than a month. Like, people really like him. There's a reason. His spin move that he did on that play where he just beat the guy went crazy. He's a special talent. What is the latest that you've heard in regards to Deuce Gerald's?
Well, apparently for the Ole Miss LSU game, he did not take the normal recruit visit to the game. He tried to do it very slyly, getting into the stadium.
And that doesn't work very well.
Yeah, that doesn't work very well at all. He got spotted and all of that, and he was hanging out with the Ole Miss defensive lineman, and now the Ole Miss recruiting class is just bombarding him. I come back to when I saw him at the Under Armour All-American game. Really, really nice kid, by the way. He said directly, and what would make you consider Ole Miss? What do you need to see from Ole Miss for you to feel comfortable about Ole Miss? And he flat out said, I want to see if they would play high school players. I want to see if high school players can get on the field. So Deuce Gerald was at the game that Cam Franklin and Will Eccles starred on the defensive line, both high school players in the state of Mississippi. Everything that he wanted to see. Now, it's going to likely be an NIL play, and LSU's they're throwing out some cash, as you've seen and heard the numbers. But if I know anything, I know that LSU team that we saw Saturday has more losses coming. And with that LSU fan base, knowing that LSU is all in and spending all that money on a roster, this, I don't know, A-bomb going around the LSU football program as far as the media and the fan base and all that is going to get really bad unless the LSU Tigers can go on a run. And at this point, it doesn't look like they can go on a run. So if that happens, you have 2 months essentially to flip Deuce Gerald's. And Deuce Gerald loves Ole Miss. He loves Oxford, everything that's around there. I think that's the big name player. The big offensive lineman that was committed to LSU last year was the right before signing day flip. I think Deuce Gerald's is that guy this year.
Wouldn't shock me. Those two schools butt heads quite a bit. And I think part of it is just kind of back to Trinidad Chambliss and the team's success. They may not have thought about it, talking about the Gerald's family or anybody else looking at Ole Miss, but you and I picked them to either make the playoff or come close. Like, I thought they would make it. I think I was higher on them than even you were. Mm-hmm. But if they make it, like if it's, let's say, November 15th and they're sitting at 9-1 or something like that, and they're just squarely in the playoff hunt, I don't think it's just Deuce Gerald's. I think it'll be there'll be guys that you and I don't even talk about right now, Stephen.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be somebody. Winning matters. Kids that are like, Ole Miss will be all right, but I don't think they can win it. If they show they can be a top 6 to top 8 seed this year, that changes your recruiting long term. Not just 26 kids, 27, 28, 29, 30. All those kids are learning about Ole Miss on the fly. It happens. I mean, like last year, I'm sure Arizona State picked up some recruiting wins because they made the playoff and they were very competitive with Texas. Probably kind of got screwed, to be honest with you. But that's how it happens. If you have a run like that, then you can have a run in recruiting thereafter. And that leads me back to my final point here. Not only is Ole Miss winning, it's fun to watch them. Mm-hmm. Even if you're a defensive player like Deuce, Trinidad's a great story. You could argue he's the best story in college football right now. He's certainly in the conversation.
Yeah.
That cannot hurt recruiting. What's your take on that?
I think it's hilarious right now because there's a lot of pictures of Trinidad Chambliss at Notre Dame Stadium. He was obviously an Irish fan. There was pictures that he got taken with Brian Kelly when he was like 10 or 11 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's one of those things. And then beating Brian Kelly in that game, I imagine that game meant something to him because he was a Notre Dame fan and all of that, and probably the respect that he had for Brian Kelly. Listen, one of the core tenets of this football team is fun. You see the fire extinguisher on the sideline, the basketball goal, all of that stuff. They want everybody to understand that we have a good time while we are beating you. And that, I think, has a chance to resonate. The fun around the program, the fact that there's like people bring their dogs to football practice and the wife and the kids are running around and all of that. Ole Miss is just a different place, and it's working. And it might be the only place in the country that would allow all of this stuff to happen, honestly, because everybody is so like really uptight about what's going on. But Lane Kiffin has forced it through to the point where he has put his own stamp on the program. And fun and having a good time and all of that, playing softball on Thursday or something like that, all of that stuff is just part of what the Ole Miss experience is. So, yeah, I think that Deuce is going to see that fun. I think that he's going to see that the LSU doesn't seem to be very fun right now with what's going on. All the questions about Nussmeier and all of that stuff, everybody kind of losing their mind. And Trinidad, like you said, he's the story of college football right now. And honestly, Ole Miss is probably beating, if they beat Georgia at that point and Trinidad has a good game, Trinidad's probably the favorite for the freaking Heisman Trophy. With the winning that. Yeah.
Winning at Georgia is not an easy task.
No. Even though it happened last week. But seriously, yeah. Before then it was 2019. But if the D2 kid walks into Sanford Stadium in Athens and pulls out a W, I mean, that should be on posters for the rest of the year. I mean, everybody. There's your Heisman campaign right there.
Yeah, I think that it's definitely a possibility. I mean, I expect him to have one crappy game somewhere along the line. The Oklahoma one is the one I've got circled because they run a funky defense. But if they can get through that game and he plays pretty well, why not Trinidad for the Heisman?
Yeah.
I mean, if he doesn't make his way to New York at this point, it would almost surprise me because he is such a good story. And let's be just really honest. Lane can coach quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And he's not afraid like that. At the end of the game, a lot of coaches would have punted. He let his quarterback throw, and it was a good play call. They schemed it open. But a lot of guys would have dirted that, too, to the wide open tight end in the flat. Trinidad put it right on him, game over. Those are the kinds of moments people are going to remember because he didn't screw it up. So good for him. And I think it's why college football, Stephen, is the best game. There's so many things that are going into it besides the actual game itself, all the storylines. And there isn't a better one, in my opinion, than Trinidad Chambliss. So tell everybody where they can find your work, my friend.
You can catch me on Locked On Ole Miss on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. We talk Ole Miss football. We try to pride ourselves on being the most fun way to follow Ole Miss sports. Whenever other people are doom and gloom, we will tell you the story and kind of phrase it and frame it in a very fun way. So stop by, hit the Twitter address down below. We'd be glad to have you.
All right, man. I appreciate it. You can find the Portal Podcast wherever you get your pods, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Podbean, or wherever you go. Thank you once again. We'll see you again soon.